This week's edition of our Four Questions Journalist Spotlight is brought to you by Leff Atlanta Media, Atlanta's best journalist database. Subscribe at leffsatlantamedia.com. Welcome to the next edition of our Four Questions Journalist Spotlight. We are talking today with the new opinion editor of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, David Plazas. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Mitch. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for being here. You're a couple months into your tenure, so I was always with new folks. I was like, let's give them a couple of months before I throw them under the podcast and give them a chance to figure out what their job is before they have to talk about what their job is. So let's start with what is your job as opinion editor of the paper? What is your role?
Sure. The vision for the opinion pages here at the AJC is to become the ultimate platform for conversations, ideas, debates in Metro Atlanta, Georgia, and the South. And so it's a big, ambitious goal, and we're doing this on a digital platform. Many of your viewers may know, and listeners may know, that the AJC on January 1st stopped printing a print publication. We still have an e-paper, but our focus is on digital because that's where the majority of our audience is. And we know that our audience, which has been growing, really craves opinion that's thoughtful on a variety of different issues. It could be about politics, but also we've had some really powerful conversations about fatherhood in Georgia, or the issues of transit, which is, MARTA is always a fun topic for a lot of people. And so my goal, especially for the first few months, was to get to know this community. I am not an Atlanta native. I've been here for just 9 months as of the time we're recording this. And I have learned quite a bit. I can tell you that I know more than I did 9 months ago, but I still have so much more to learn. For example, where to get the best lemon pepper chicken in town. So I've gotten a lot of different ideas from people.
All right, Mitch here with a little reminder to subscribe today to our Leff Atlanta Media database, the best database of Atlanta media. You get to search all the media in town, get to look at their beats, get the contact information, get to know what they like. You also get our great PR guidelines. You learn how to do PR. You get our media blog, Mitch's Media Musings, and you get to see our Four Questions Journalist Spotlight. So subscribe today.
And what have you found in terms of, you found a good lemon pepper chicken spot yet?
So I haven't gone yet, but the two places that have been recommended to me are the Local and then Magic City, which apparently is a strip club. And so I was told that was the place to go, but I've not been to either yet.
Yeah, the local is great. I don't know that I've been to Magic City in a long time. I may not admit to ever having been there.
I'm sure you never have. I'm sure.
Never been there. Never been to a place like that. Yeah, a friend of mine another journalist is doing a chicken wing competition. I think Magic City and RJR Crickets and Taco Mac are top on our list of buffalo chicken, different kinds of chicken wings. So, but you can get any kind of chicken wings in town. And I won't get into the barbecue. That you'll have to do the barbecue. I'll get yelled at if I start making barbecue recommendations.
Well, I've just been so impressed with Atlanta as a food city. I'm a foodie. I love exploring, and you asked in terms of my job. I write columns, but I also curate opinions. We have our own guest columnists, and we have a whole bunch of people. We run about 60 guest columns a month from people talking about a variety of different issues. A lot of them are timely, related to the news, and some of them are more evergreen, about issues related to health, access. We just had a tribute today to Dr. Bill Foege, who was the legendary former CDC director who helped eradicate smallpox, and has played such a significant role, Atlanta native, or at least Atlanta resident, I should say, and he made such an impact beyond this area. And so we look to be the heart of conversations that are focused on a local voice, but also have the possibility of reaching global audiences like this particular tribute did.
Is there a way? Is there a differentiator? Is it we are this but not this? And I ask that question also partly in terms so you don't get submissions that are totally off base, right?
Yeah. So our motto is that we are the substance and soul of the South. We've been that's our direction, and it's something that I'm very, very much excited about. As I've lived in the South most of my life, even though I'm from Chicago originally, but I've lived in Florida, Tennessee, and Georgia, and a lot of it is reflecting that Southern charm, the history, sometimes the complicated history. So we take the precedence is for Georgia Voices, Georgia Topics. but sometimes they go beyond that. We have so many wonderful experts at universities such as Georgia Tech or Clark Atlanta University or University of Georgia talking about mineral rights, which is a huge issue, data centers, which is an enormous issue here in Georgia and beyond, as well as political issues. So, this week that we're recording, the FBI raided the Fulton County election site. That's been huge on the minds of many of our readers and many of our writers about what does this mean for election integrity. Both in terms of the perspective of can we have free and fair elections, or did we not have a free and fair election back in 2020? I certainly have a strong opinion about that. That if you want to get into it, I will. But readers, we want to
That's
create
a that's a whole nother podcast, right?
That's true. But we want to give space for people to have really robust conversations and sometimes controversial conversations. Obviously, never to dehumanize anybody. We are not going to be permitting people to debase other people because of their background. But we want people to have robust and passionate debates about the issues they care about. I mean, this is the essence of our democratic republic.
Does and with the all digital now format, is there a thought of making, obviously you've got the written pieces that come in. Is there a thought to doing a more, I don't want to say a debate, but a more back and forth, either I don't know, a video kind of format where people are talking about those kinds of issues? There's an audio or a video component to what you're doing.
Well, with the AJC, definitely. With opinion, not yet. And I'm still, relatively new, so I'm still
Yeah.
learning the ropes here in terms of how to get into. Most of my focus has been on text conversations, social media conversations, et cetera. But there is a very strong video presence here at the AJC that is looking at telling stories that, go from, why MARTA, became so controversial in the 1970s, why it didn't get into places like Cobb County or Gwinnett County, or talking about the airport, being its own city, essentially having a river. A lot of these stories that are really, really fascinating to tell, or even just this past week, the Fulton County election site raid. Eventually, I would definitely love to get into that. But at this moment, one of the areas though that we've been able to focus is back and forth through letters to the editor. On Saturday, January 31st, we will be publishing, or will have published, depending on when this comes out, a series of letters of people responding to the immigration enforcement efforts in Minnesota, protests, and also a recent, I guess, column by Representative Buddy Carter, who called for more immigration and customs enforcement resources to come in Atlanta. And that was one of our best read of this month, but also very
Yeah, yeah.
controversial. People very
Well,
angry about that.
yeah, his timing was I imagine you probably had that a few days at least before. But yeah, that I've seen a lot of news coverage about the that one. Beyond the AJC, and certainly a lot of huge amount of social media buzz about that his request to bring more ICE to Atlanta.
Yeah, one of the
Considering,
things I'll say with that is that, there's often this perception that, we just post whatever was sent to us, but the reality is we take our time to review for accuracy, to fact check, and also to work with the author in case we have some questions. So had been working on that for a little bit, and it did happen to run between the fatal shootings of Renee Good and also Alex Preddy in Minnesota by ICE agents. But it also allowed and really created a sense of a desire to participate in the public forum by so many of our readers who were very passionate about it. And not everybody agreed. Every single one. This is not, carbon cutout. It's not a letter campaign. So many of them have different reasons why they have a particular opinion. At this time, I tell folks oftentimes people will complain about who's in power the most. So generally, if you're in a Republican administration, you hear a lot of complaints about them and generally the otherwise, if you have a Democratic administration. And right now, people are angry about a lot of things, prices of food, immigration enforcement, the cold and the weather, for example, some things that we don't have control over.
I saw a lot of last weekend. I saw people complaining about the meteorologist because it wasn't as bad as they said it was going
Mm.
to be. And it's like, meteorologists are doing the best they can with the data they have, right? But people are always going to complain about something. But
Mm.
it is interesting to see it. I don't
They,
envy you
they
having to.
forecast the weather, they don't control the weather. So that's one thing.
Right, right,
I have
right.
friends
Yeah,
who are meteorologists, and one of them who told me recently that anytime there was a change in weather, people would scream at him at the grocery store because like I didn't water my plants today because you said it was going to rain, so that kind of
well,
thing.
that's the inevitable thing, right? If
Mm.
if the forecast says rain and you don't water your plants, then it's definitely not going to rain, right? Yeah, it's the old washing your car thing. If you wash your car, you know it's going to rain.
Yeah.
Uh, so what are what are some suggestions you would make for folks if they have something they think could be on the editorial pages and the opinion pages? What are some guidelines in terms of uh, how long something should be, how far in advance they should do it, topics, that kind of conversation.
Yeah, we generally have two types of opinions. One of them is the letters to the editor, and the other one is the guest opinion column. And the letters to the editor are short, up to 250 words. It's kind of like the vox populi, the just you spout off on what you believe. It still has to be accurate, but at the same time, it can just be you and a kind of a passionate speech, a kind of a Hyde Park type of thing in England where people are just speaking their mind. The guest opinion column requires a lot more effort and research. Links, maximum 750 words. We want Georgia voices, Georgia topics, but even if they're national topics told from a Georgia and Atlanta lens. These are things that sometimes take time to edit. If it's kind of speaking to the news, with some of our columnists, for example, John Eves, who was the former Fulton County Commission chairman, wrote a piece that came out on Thursday, January 29th, talking about why people should care about this raid on the Fulton County site. Eric Erickson, who's a talk show host, who's now one of our regular columnists, wrote about immigration enforcement issues. So the title effectively of his opinion was, you can defend deportations, but also condemn wrongful law enforcement. And so a really, really powerful piece that juxtaposes these issues. We want people to think, oftentimes, yes, we want the writers to identify a problem, but it's great if they can identify a solution or an idea that puts this all into context. We want to connect the dots for people. This is not about casting heat. It really is about shining light on issues. And at times, many of these opinions start from a place of fear, anger, concern, curiosity, but they can turn to things that help people understand. Now, I've written a few columns in the last few months. One of the columns that I wrote, it was after reading 107 Days by Vice President Kamala Harris. And by the end of it, I was convinced that she had revealed why she lost the election. And I basically, in a column, had laid out from her own points and also research that I had done over some time. The title of the column was "The Rise and Fall of Kamala Harris Started in Atlanta." From the debate between President Biden and now President Trump to many of the events that were held there in Atlanta. And so, I even with my writing, I try to focus on what is happening here and how do we relate it to the readers who are here in this area.
So would you suggest folks that they, so this is a little bit of a leading question, right? Well, 'cause I always suggest to my clients kind of try to anticipate. Think of things that are going to be happening in the next days, weeks, or months.
Mhm.
And if you think you're going to have an opinion about that, don't wait until the day it happens to try and start writing it, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and part of the reason is that we get a lot of content in. So a lot of it is the question of production. If someone is going to say, I have an opinion, can it run this morning? The likely answer is not,
Probably not.
because it takes time. It takes time to fact
Yeah,
check these
yeah,
things. We have to know if it's true. We have to know that it's right. We have to be confident that it's not going to embarrass us in some way. And even if people disagree with the opinion, that's okay. The question is, was it properly processed? I'm very proud of the process we have here at the AJC where the opinions come in, I edit them. I also have the team that helps me out with that. And afterwards, it goes through a quality control process to make sure that the things that are being written about are accurate. It's kind of a mix of optimization and copy desk type of duties, which are incredibly helpful to us in terms of making sure that we keep a high quality when it comes to those opinions. There are times if something really is of the moment that we will shift things to the front of the line. But a lot of times we're talking about a few weeks before we're publishing someone's opinion simply because of the volume of opinions. And, we are trying to get as many voices out there, but we also have to be very thoughtful about how we do that.
yeah. And I tell my clients sometimes, just because you've written a great thing, there's a possibility that someone else has written something very similar,
Hmm.
and there are other factors that come into play. If you get four four op-eds about a Supreme Court decision, you'll have to decide, okay, yes, they're all kind of saying the same thing, but this voice is a different
Hmm.
voice, or this is someone we haven't had before. Uh, I imagine there's kind of those kind of things that come into play about it. Uh, and we represent the business school and the law school at Emory, so they're we do op-eds, and a lot of times they want to professors will be like, "Oh, I want to be in the New York Times," and of course they all want to be in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, and be like, "No, let's do the Journal Constitution. That's
Mhm.
your local paper. This is where you are." Um, and they appreciate that. They understand that it's sometimes a competitive thing. There's probably a lot more people sending op-eds into the New York Times than in the AJC, right? Just because it's the New York Times. Uh, not that not that I'm sure your volume isn't crazy, right?
Yeah, no, it's pretty extensive, but I will tell you this, that, really what sustains a democratic republic, what sustains democracy is investments in local democracy, and that includes the local press. So when I work with writers, whether at Emory or elsewhere, we just published a piece by the interim dean of the nursing school at Emory talking about radical compassion and the role of nurses in the wake of the killing of Alex Preddy. By ICE agents in Minnesota, and it was a very, very powerful piece. Very brief, interesting. It was about 400 words. So sometimes brevity matters, and sometimes you do need to give more time and more length to something to really, explain something. If I see something that I think is over 750 words, I don't automatically say, "Oh, I can't run this." Rather, how does it read? Does it flow? Does it make sense? Is it being repetitive or duplicative? Or is it something that really makes a point that takes you on a journey? That storytelling journey is really important. That connection with the reader is very, very important. People stories matter as well. If people can relate to someone, I get asked questions of why do you need the headshot of a writer? And the reason is we want to connect that writer with the public. The public doesn't necessarily know who the writer is. And now that you have a face, and now you can put a name and a face, and now you're like, okay, I may disagree with this particular opinion, but I will at least let this person take me down, and I'll evaluate whether or not they changed my mind, or maybe I found a good point from it.
Yeah. Are there some topics that you're looking at a month, 2 months, 3 months down the road where you're looking for content in particular?
Yes, I mean, some of the things that we've been really focusing on the last couple of months, really gearing up for is a look at, solving the problems that are really threats to the growth of Atlanta and Georgia writ large, things like transportation uh, issues, the housing, affordable housing issues, and not just in the affordability context of the political debates that we're seeing, but really some substantive looks. I wrote a column a few months ago about the middle class housing crisis, and the very fact that this is no longer something that is focused on low income folks alone. Middle class people are being stretched right now. They may not be able to afford a house or a place to live. And so you're seeing this erosion, which is really detrimental to the state of the future of business, to the future of commerce and the future of Georgia, which has grown so much over the last few years. So things like that, how do we solve these problems that are, for example, another piece that we ran a few months ago had to do with the crisis of rural Georgia and how, you're seeing so many communities that are being decimated because jobs aren't there, hospitals or health centers have closed. And you also have this sense of, what exactly is it to live there? But you have this skewed politics that, and this has been for decades in Georgia, and in Tennessee, where I most recently came from, where rural legislators typically have a dominance over their legislatures and often an antipathy toward the metropolitan areas.
And you may have probably heard this term that there are two Georgias, right? You heard that?
Yes,
There's
yes.
Atlanta and the rest of the state, uh, which is somewhat true. I mean, and if you never get out of Atlanta, you're really in a bubble. You're not experiencing what the rest of the state is about, and um, I'm sure you'll travel when you've only been here a few months, but you'll see you'll get the opportunity to see a lot more of the state as you get out and about.
I'm very much
Uh,
looking forward to it. Right now, where I've been a couple times has been North Georgia, areas like Ellijay and Blue Ridge, beautiful, beautiful communities, but very,
yeah,
very different from, Metro Atlanta. And even Metro Atlanta, having explored, when I first came here, I lived the first 8 months in Cumming in Forsyth County, and had the terrible commute. So I have experienced what Atlanta traffic is, because I work in Midtown. Now I live in Midtown, and so I actually walk to work today.
I was gonna
But
say you walk to work. Yeah,
I
there you
did.
go.
It was a beautiful day to walk, and so just about 15-minute walk. But I was driving 3 hours a day when I was coming in from Cumming. Round trip.
Ain't no
Yeah,
cause for that, right? 3 hours. That's just
three
yeah.
three hours for over essentially 70, 65, 70 miles.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had some jobs where in Metro Atlanta where it would take me 45 minutes or an hour each way, and if it, God help you, if it rains in Atlanta, you're just just kind of I'm just gonna wait it
Well,
out.
well, I mean, this is, I always think about it from this standpoint. When I would travel from Nashville to Memphis, Tennessee, which is about 200 miles, it would generally take me to 3 to 3.5 hours, one way. And to think about that context in terms of the daily commute. But it also made me a lot more empathetic to some of these issues related to growth. People really feel choked. One of the opinions that we published a few weeks ago that was really powerful, very well read, was by a student who attends a religious school in Norcross, but is coming from Stockbridge, which is almost 50 miles away. So she's driving this, 100 miles a day during the school day, and it really has this 16-year-old perspective on the traffic. She wants to go to this school because it's a for faith reasons, and at the same time, it's making her quality of life hard. And I think a lot of people related to that. And when you put into the fact that she just wants to get a good education, you have the issue of quality of life, access to good education and opportunity. It makes a lot of sense to the average person of why this opinion matters so much.
Yeah, I mean the transportation in this town has been. I mean, I've been living here almost 50 years. I originally came down from New York when I was a kid, but I've heard stories about MARTA and why it goes places and not others. I mean, the old Brave Stadium where I think there's the Georgia State has a stadium now. The MARTA rail literally went around around the stadium, and I thought, oh, that must have been because the MARTA was there before they built the stadium, and people told me no, the stadium was there, and they built MARTA, and they chose not to go to the stadium. They went around the stadium, and politics and money and control and all of those kinds of silly things. So, I mean, I used to go to Braves games in the '90s, and you'd take MARTA, get off the train, get on a bus,
Hmm.
and the bus would drive you, you know, quarter mile to the stadium, which is ridiculous, right? Why not? You know?
No, absolutely. No, I'll tell you that I love public transit. I grew up in Chicago, took the train, the L, took the bus almost every day, and I have my MARTA card. I ride as often as I can. But and when I was coming in from Cumming, oftentimes I would stop at the North Spring station and take the train down. But you have to plan your day very, very carefully to do that. I went to Mayor Andre Dickens' inauguration for a second term, which is at Georgia State University Stadium, and I chose not to take MARTA because it would have taken me so long to get there. And parking was right down from the stadium.
Yeah.
You'd had to walk from the MARTA station or take a bus, as you mentioned, you just around the state capitol to get there, and it was going to be really logistically complex. And so I think the one thing that I think is complementary very much of MARTA, I just took my mom for the first time on the MARTA. She had never taken it, and so I was picking her up from the airport. She was coming back from a trip to see relatives in Tampa, Florida. And she loved the experience because we had been stuck in 2 to 3 hours of traffic getting back up to Cumming because of how 75 and 85 are. And she loved that experience of being able to not be interrupted. And so that was one very big. And my understanding is that when Weichfowler was the city council vice mayor president back in the 1970s, that was a big part of that decision to make sure that not only did the MARTA go near the airport, but actually went in the airport, and that's
Yeah.
unusual
Yeah.
for most airports.
Yeah. That's and I have sometimes had relatives who have been coming in either, you know, during high time of traffic and say, "Oh, yeah, my flight comes in at 4." I was like, "Get on MARTA, go to Lindbergh, I'll pick you up, and we'll be good. Otherwise, I'm going to be an hour and a half each way in traffic, and so will
Yes.
you be." And it's much more relaxing. I mean, I took MARTA down to work for many years when I was younger. All right, so let's get into the hard question now. So, you ready? All right. So, what's something cool or fun about David that people might not know about?
So I love running, and I've done a few races. And aside from the Peachtree Road race last year, I also did my first Santa Speedo Run in
Ah,
December. It was very cold,
yeah,
and but it's just as you can imagine. You can use your imagination if you wish. But what I loved about it was the camaraderie, and also it was uh, benefiting a charity that focused on helping people with HIV and AIDS, and that was great. So I'm a big runner, and I am looking forward to another Peachtree Road race this year. And aside from that, I'm also like to sing. I'm not a professional by any means, but I sang in choirs for a long, long time, and I once won a talent show wearing a bullfighter costume, singing the aria, the bullfighter aria, the torero from the opera Carmen. And that was a long time ago, but that was a lot of fun.
Do we have, is that on YouTube somewhere?
No, this was pre-YouTube, so this would have been
Fortunately,
around
it's not a.
2002.
All right. So the next couple of questions is kind of a lightning round. So just kind of short answers. We don't have to get into too detail. But what's the last book you've read or the last podcast you've listened to? You don't have to do both.
Yeah, so the last book I read was Where Peachtree Meets Sweet Auburn. It's by Gary Pomerantz,
Yep.
who was a reporter for the AJC, and it was a fantastic read. One of my contacts here sent it to me and said, "You need to read it if you're going to learn about Atlanta." And I took my time going to different places like 2600 Peachtree Road, where the Allen family resided, all the way down to what used to be Houston Street, now John Wesley Dobbs Avenue, where the other part, this book, for those who don't know, is really the history of two absolutely consequential mayors of Atlanta, Ivan Allen Jr., who was the first white civil rights mayor, and then Maynard Jackson Jr., who was the first black mayor of Atlanta, and really pushed through a lot of civil rights related legislation locally. And one of the thing that makes me very excited is I just a few days ago had the chance to interview Gary for a column that I'll be running in the next few weeks. And it'll be coming out very, very soon. So if you haven't read it, it's a long book, 550 words, but 550 pages. I'm sorry, 550 pages. But Gary, it was such a fantastic read to really get me to think about, the spirit of Atlanta, what it could have been had a segregationist candidate won the mayor's race in 1961, and how it sees itself as a global city, whether it's Gone with the Wind in 1939 or with the Olympics in 1996.
Yeah, that's a great book. I think it's on my shelf here somewhere. Uh, I have a shelf full of lots of books written by AJC reporters. The reporters are prolific on lots of interesting topics. All right, favorite local restaurant? And I know you're still kind of getting into it, but what's a good place that you found that you really love?
So the place I most frequently go to take people to, and again, I'm not sure if it's a local restaurant, so you'll have to correct me, but it's right across the street in Colony Square, Boqueria, which is a tapas place.
Yeah.
And I spent a year abroad in Spain when I was a junior in college, and fell in love with tapas and Spanish food. And so that was the day I went to Boqueria right before my interview at the AJC. I've taken a lot of people there, whether it's Mike Lukovich, the Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist for the AJC, or whether friends and relatives, and we've all had a great experience. So that's the restaurant I've been to the most, but I am open to a lot of recommendations locally.
Check out Buford Highway, man. There's so much food culture, just from one end to the other.
I'll have to check out because I've been to one restaurant there, Las Delicias de la Abuela. It's a Colombian restaurant, which is right next to the Buford Farmers Market,
Okay. All
right there, and it's delicious. So I've had that quite a bit.
right. Favorite guilty pleasure?
Ooh, favorite guilty pleasure. Um, so I like, because my dad loved making Manhattans. Every now and then I'll have an occasional Manhattan. Bourbon doesn't agree with me always, um, but I do like to have that sometimes when I'm feeling especially motivated and especially relaxed. So that's one of my favorite guilty pleasures.
See that? My dad used to make egg creams,
Mm,
so I can never make them as well as he did, but I will, because he had that You Bet chocolate syrup. That, if you ever
mm.
seen that, which is like that's the only way to make an egg cream if you're talking to people. Okay, favorite local getaway. If you found I think you mentioned Blue Ridge, right?
Yeah, well, I will tell you this. I recently moved to Midtown, and it's right on Piedmont Park, and I have fallen in love with that park, whether it's running there or taking my dogs there, and really exploring. And then the Beltline. I recently did Sunday brunch with some new friends, and we walked from Krog Street Market all the way up to Midtown to 10th Street, and just had a wonderful time. So those kinds of experiences where I can just be outside. So I'm a huge outdoors person, and at the same time eat. Those are the things that and
Yeah.
drink. Those are the things that are fun.
I will make some recommendations on the Georgia coast for you too. So there's some great, wonderful places on the coast.
Mhm.
Uh, Okay, favorite non-work hobby.
Favorite non-work hobby. I mean, I would say it's probably mm, running. Definitely, it
Yeah,
puts me in a good space. So that's where I actually do most of my writing is in my head. And the reality is, again, I'm happy to run anywhere, but being in a place like Piedmont Park has really honed and heightened my creativity, shall I say?
yeah. Atlanta's got a. I don't know compared to other cities, but Atlanta seems to have a lot of 5Ks, 10Ks.
Hmm.
Uh, Peachtree Road Race, of course, but I think there's a hot chocolate run or something on Sunday morning this
Hmm.
weekend, if the weather permits. All right. So, is there anything about the work side as we wrap up here? Is there anything about the work side that we haven't talked about that you want to mention in terms of the opinion pages?
Well, I think the thing that makes me excited is that there's so many things to comment on in a variety of different ways, and I'm excited to work with writers personally just to make sure that we get it to a level where it'll amplify their message and at the same time ensure that we continue to have really insightful conversation. Um, I'll tell you just on a quick personal front, this is a big year for me because I turned the big 50 in September. And I'm actually coming into it with a lot of optimism and a lot of and thinking about, even the past, it used to be when I was younger that I think about maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that. And I really have fewer regrets. I have fewer reservations, and I feel more comfortable with myself now. And I think one of the things that helped with that was coming from the Tennessean to the AJC because I'd been with the same company for 25 years, with the USA Today Company, Tennessean, and before the Fort Myers News Press. And I
Yeah,
thought to myself, am I capable in middle age of starting something new, of being in a new city and starting over? And the answer is a hearty yes. Nine
you're
months into it,
young. You're
I mean,
young.
the curiosity. I mean, for me, that's been one of the things in terms of maybe even a second guilty pleasure. That curiosity about things. I am curious about people and curious about things and exploring things.
Excellent. Well, I have noticed a change as I read the editorial pages. The pieces I've seen are, as you said, I feel like they're more, I don't want to say research, but more I can feel the curation, right? I feel like the topics are, I don't know, not that the pages weren't before, but I see the change. So
Mhm.
I will say that I appreciate the work that you've done in the
Thank
last
you.
9 months because I see it as a,
Yeah, yeah, and I built upon a great legacy, past editorial page editors, Jamie Riley, Andre Jackson, others who've really added so much to this. It's a privilege and just a big honor to be able to do this here at the AJC at this time where we have this tremendous vision of growth. We're in an era, as you know, that local news has contracted quite a bit. We've seen tremendous change in the industry. And I'm in a situation right now where there is a stated public ambition to grow and thrive in this digital age where we have a lot of different competitors and a lot of different things that grab our attention from artificial intelligence to other avenues that distract. But I think I see the quality of the journalism. I see the quality of my colleagues, and it gets me more and more excited every day to do it.
yeah, I mean, I've been working with the AJC for almost 40 years on the professional side, and people complain sometimes, oh, they're changing this or changing that, but I appreciate that the paper is looking forward and always looking towards how do we make ourselves continue to be relevant, continue to be read, continue to expand the readership. And as you said, it's a challenging news environment, but people are consuming information in different ways. And I feel like the AJC has done a good job of in trying to be forward with that. I was working with
Hmm.
somebody on the her story section a
Hmm.
couple of months ago, and she produced a whole series of social media, TikTok, Instagram videos that went along with a print story, and it was just remarkable what she did with it. It was great. All right, so we have been talking with David Plazas, the opinion new brand new 9 months opinion editor with the Atlanta Journal Constitution. Thank you so much, David, for being with us, spending a little time with us today.
No, thank you for the opportunity, Mitch. I appreciate it. And thank you to your viewers and your listeners. This is an honor to be here in Atlanta, and I hope to continue to learn. If you want to reach me, you can reach me at david.plazas@ajc.com, and I'm happy to connect with you.
Excellent. And as always, if you're looking for our archive of Four Questions Journalist Spotlight, you can go to YouTube for the video format, or you can go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere you get audio podcasts, and you'll find it there. And click the subscribe button if you want. That's always fun to get another subscriber. And as always, if you're looking for our database of Atlanta journalists, go to leffsatlantamedia.com and check that out, and you'll get our database and plus our monthly Mitch's Media Musings, which is the only place that covers the Atlanta's journalist community. So you can check all that out. And again, thanks, David, and we'll see everybody in about 2 weeks.